who would otherwise not be heard. We seek to address the problems of equality and fairness by assuring that those who influence change represent the broader community and understand the economic and social realities facing people of color. The Urban League movement is a national movement that began in 1910 as a response to millions of African Americans moving from the South to northern communities and from rural communities to urban ones. For anyone to thrive back then and even now, you have to have secure housing. This is why the Metropolitan Wilmington Urban League stands in support of the following bills. SB 101, the right to representation during evictions. And this bill creates a right to legal representation for renters facing evictions whose household income is lower than 200% of the federal poverty guidelines. It also places coordination of the program within the Delaware Attorney General's office, who will contract with appropriate legal service organizations to provide representation in proceedings covered by the bill. Also, it introduces a post-filing mediation program and a mandatory referral to the Delaware Housing Assistance Program, affectionately called as DHAP, which creates more opportunities for amicable, quick, and satisfactory resolutions of disputes in ways that keep families housed and landlords paid. We are also in support of HB 235, Bill of Rights for the individuals experiencing homelessness. This bill provides persons experiencing homelessness protection from discrimination when seeking housing, employment, and temporary shelter. The bill also provides legal and civil protections to ensure equal treatment during the use of public spaces and buildings. We're also in support of SB 90. It's the end source of income discrimination for people with government-sponsored rental assistance or vouchers. And just really quickly, what does this bill do? The Delaware Fair Housing Act and Residential Landlord Tenant Code both prohibit discrimination based on source of income, which is defined as including rental payments from any government program. Both laws also provides that the landlord non-participation in a government-sponsored rental assistance, voucher, or certificate system cannot be the basis for the administrative or judicial proceedings. This act revises both the Delaware Fair Housing Act and Residential Landlord Tenant Code to repeal the exception to discrimination based on source of income that allows a landlord to discriminate against tenants who participate in government-sponsored rental assistance programs. And lastly, this is why, as the Metropolitan Wilmington Urban League, we are opposed to HB 458, which states that to expand the City of Wilmington's eminent domain powers. What does this bill do? If we pass this, what it does is that it has a long history of disproportionately impacting low-income African-American communities. The City of Wilmington's population, that is only 50% African-American, while the state's population is 22% African-American. Many of the census tracts where Wilmington's vacant properties are concentrated have populations that are 80% or more African American. Creating special rules governing eminent domain use in Wilmington's primarily African American neighborhoods may be inconsistent with the Fair Housing Act and regulations around disparate impact. Just like in 1910 when the Urban League was founded, the League is fighting to ensure every single person has a right to fair and secure housing. When you do not have to worry about where you lay your head at night, that empowers children to do better in school. It allows the adult population to be productive at work and in society. And lastly, it allows our senior population to not worry about the day-to-day and enjoy their time. The Urban League has been fighting since 1910 and 1999, since the founding here in Delaware. And the Urban League, the Metropolitan Wilmington Urban League, continues to fight for you. Thank you.
Next up, we have Rachel Stucker, the Executive Director of the Housing Alliance of Delaware.
Hi, good morning. We have a housing and homelessness crisis in this state. And in this city, it is both shocking and able to be prevented and able to be addressed. I'm here today to ask our elected leaders, as well as the private sector housing providers in our communities, to act, to do better, and to make addressing this housing crisis a priority. In the past 2 years since COVID-19 came to Delaware, more people than ever have been pushed out of housing and into homelessness. Since January of 2020, homelessness in Delaware has doubled. Homelessness among families with children has tripled. 1 in 3 people who is experiencing homelessness in our state right now is a child under the age of 18. Rental prices are increasing dramatically and have increased more than can be kept track of just in the past year. Ensuring that incomes remain well below what hardworking people, recent college graduates, families, or seniors that are living in this city and this state can afford and can earn to keep a roof over their heads. At the very same time, there's been an increase in rental help, like an increase in housing vouchers and investments from the federal government. But here in Delaware, far too many property owners and landlords are refusing to allow tenants to make use of this help, essentially blocking families who can pay rent from accessing decent rental housing in our community. Efforts have been made to address this housing crisis. SB 90, sponsored by Senator Lockman in the Senate, is a bill that guarantees that low-income households receiving government-sponsored rental assistance have fair and equal access to housing in all of the communities in our state. But this bill has not made it to the House floor to be considered for a vote. SB 101 is a bill that would ensure that low-income tenants facing eviction have access to representation through the eviction process. This bill would stabilize lives and communities and in many cases help landlords get what they are owed in the process. SB 101 would have the biggest impact on families and communities here in the city of Wilmington who are disproportionately impacted by the suffering that is caused by eviction. This bill is currently stuck in the Appropriations Committee and is being prevented from consideration on the House floor in Dover, even though funds have already been appropriated for its implementation. Most of us want what's best for our families, and not having a stable roof over your head, a consistent address, or a place to shower makes getting or keeping a job, performing well in school, or being emotionally and physically healthy near impossible. Thank you for having me to speak today. To our elected leaders, private market housing partners, and policymakers, now is the time to act and make addressing our affordable housing crisis a priority in our state. Thank you.
Next, we have the campaign manager for the Building People Power campaign and one of the co-organizers with the Homes campaign, Cheyenne Miller.
So let's not make a mistake. This session we have seen some great progress in housing reform bills that would improve the lives of Delawareans. And we appreciate the work that the Senate and the House have done to give access to legal help for renters, the work that they've done to help protect the civil rights of people who are experiencing homelessness, and to stop income discrimination for people who are receiving government assistance to pay their rent. And we want to make sure the House isn't going to stop now, because it's urgent, more now than ever, that the House actually passes SB 101 and that they pass HB 235 and that they pass SB 90. And specifically with HB 235, we're talking about a Bill of Rights that's going to help some of the most vulnerable people in our state. We're talking about people who are experiencing homelessness. And as you heard from Rachel, there are too many families right now that are out on the streets. There are too many families that are experiencing homelessness. And that means we need to do the best we can to protect their civil and legal rights. And so we want to make sure that this bill, which is actually a low lift, right, for the General Assembly, is actually passed, and that we're not waiting until the last minute to get it through. So we want to make sure we're protecting all Delawareans from discrimination, regardless of whether they're living in a home or not. On the other hand, we do have concerns about HB 458, because we don't know if it's going to benefit Delawareans the way that it's intended. This is the eminent domain bill that we keep hearing a lot about that would change laws and loosen procedural protections for property owners while broadening the City of Wilmington's power to use eminent domain to assemble land for developers. Currently, the state already gives the City of Wilmington the power to use eminent domain to remove a blighted area or a slum area, remove a property that's beyond repair or unfit for human habitation or abandoned, and transfer it to a private developer for redevelopment. We already have these laws in place. And yet it's unclear why we need 458. Or why Wilmington needs it specifically. Why is it targeting one jurisdiction over the entire state? You know, Delawareans who own property in Wilmington should be entitled to the same rights and protections as any other citizen in the state. Furthermore, we got to ask questions about how this is going to impact Black and Brown and Latino residents in the city. Eminent domain has a long history of impacting the low-income African-American communities in the city, right? This is what we used to be able to split the city up when we had 95 built. So it's just important for us to know that in a majority Black city, why are we being targeted, right? And does this violate anything with the Fair Housing Act, and which adds protections for people by race when it comes to housing? What we're asking is that 458 is not rushed through. HB 458 was just introduced on June 7th, 2022. And on June 16th, HB 458 got voted out of committee without a public hearing. Delaware should lead the nation in promoting equitable development in vibrant neighborhoods, not fall into the old patterns that have the potential to reinforce those discriminatory practices. We have great bills on the docket, ones that are actually going to benefit the state, that's going to benefit people who are experiencing some of the worst things in people's lives, like eviction or homelessness. We have those good bills. We can protect some of our most vulnerable residents. So we're urging that the House passes SB 101, SB 90, and HB 235, but they need to hold off on 458. They need to stop HB 458. Thank you.
Again, my name is Kobe Owens. I know most of y'all here. And we're out here today because this is a racial justice and a civil rights issue. Wilmington, percentage-wise, is the 12th blackest city in the nation. And for them to target our residents here is a huge violation of our civil rights. The fact is, eminent domain has a long history with Black and Brown communities. First, municipalities typically pursue redevelopment projects in areas with low property values because condemning authority pays less compensation from the state and local levels, but they realize they will have the greatest financial gains. And that is what we're looking at here. We're looking at a bill that would allow city government the ability to go into poor neighborhoods, predominantly neighborhoods of color, and take houses. Instead of using the resources we have already and investing in adequate, affordable housing that is safe here in the city of Wilmington. On a statewide level, we are coming out of a pandemic that has hit everyone, regardless of your race, your gender, your economic standing. Everyone has been affected by COVID-19. Yet, leadership, Speaker Swarthkoff, Chair Carson have decided to hold up bills that will benefit every resident here, especially renters. And if we want to circle back to this city, which is now predominantly renters, that would help keep so many people in their houses right now. Because we know what happens. Because we lack the resources in some of our communities, they're taken advantage of in eviction court. So that is why SB 101 is so important to get passed. But yet, leadership decided not to act on that, but to fast track a bill to take away housing. Delaware already faces a housing crisis. We are already in a housing crisis right now. And usually what happens and these redevelopment zones with these new houses that they want to give to organizations and companies, what happens is they bring them in at such an increased value that even the affordable housing in the area sees an increase in that. So therefore, people are displaced. Look, no city can survive without growth. No city can survive without reinvestment. But you have to do it in a way that does not displace the people who are here already. Wilmington has great culture. Wilmington is a city that is diverse. It's a city that's welcoming. And the slogan used to be a city to be someone. Well, if you want to be someone, you have to have a home over your head. Somewhere where you can lay your head that is safe, that's affordable, that does not have black mold, doesn't have poor heating, doesn't have no hot water. That's what the government should be looking at. How can we look at elevating the city in a way that addresses this? We have seen time and time again this administration, the council, and even the General Assembly say, well, this bill is going to be the solution that fits everything. And advocates have spoken out, community members have spoken out and said, wait, we have a solution. Why? Because we are most proximate to this. We are right there. We live this every day. We know exactly what we need. And the government has ignored them. And yet, again, they're saying that the solutions that they put forward did not work. And this is the reason why we need HB 458. It's a sham what they're doing. They shut down public comment. Residents wanted to speak out against this bill, and when they saw that, the bill sponsor worked with the majority leader to shut it down. And the bill sponsor is a representative right here from Wilmington, and shame on Representative Trucocha for that. This is about our communities. It's about our cities, and we have to stand up. That's why thousands have taken action already to reach out to say we do not want this bill. But what we do want, we want SB 101. We want SB 90. We want housing justice in Delaware and in Wilmington. And as we come out of this pandemic even more, we have to continue to look at it in a lens that uplifts people, not displaces them and takes their homes away. Thank you, and next up is Brandon Fletcher.
Hello, my name is Brandon Fletcher. I am the chair of the NAACP Housing Committee. And I'm just here to say that HB 458 is not necessary to address Wilmington's problem with vacant properties. It would only loosen the existing protections for property owners while broadening the City of Wilmington's power to use eminent domain to assemble land for greedy private developers. We need housing policies that serve people, not real estate. Even before the pandemic, Black and brown mothers and children were losing their homes at alarming rates. But now the eviction crisis has reached historic levels, destabilizing our communities. There are two things here that are at the root of Wilmington's housing crisis. First, the real estate industry has too much power and the people have too little. Second, the public sector has failed to invest in the real solutions to ensure that everyone has access to safe and secure and permanent affordable housing. And the NAACP Housing Committee, we are committed to taking on the real estate industry and the power that they wield in the Perzicki administration. HB 458 only serves to reduce oversight and accountability in the use of eminent domain in the City of Wilmington, all under the guise of a community development plan, which we know and is widely known not to be a real plan for any of our communities. This isn't wise or fair. I urge the House of Representatives to focus on more expedient matters, such as passing SB 101, giving tenants the right to representation, and SB 90, ending source of income discrimination for housing vouchers and government-sponsored rental assistance programs. Thank you.
Next up, I have the president of the state conference, Delaware State Conference of the NAACP, Richard Mouse Smith.
Good evening, everybody. Here we go again. 25 years ago, 30 years ago, they closed up houses in Riverside, Speakman Park, a thing called the Bucket. They sent all black folks down to 40 to Brookmont Farms. They decreased the population in Wilmington like it wasn't nothing. This was under Dan Farley's administration. Then they turned around and started boarding up houses. Now they back again. Representative Dennis Williams put a bill in to stop domain for Ed Osborne, because they wanted to take all the business over on South Bridge by the high rises, put people out and develop it for high rent. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Pacini, where do our people go when you take these houses and you come back with $5,000 rent, $7,000 rent, and you try to make this a little New York or a little San Francisco, where poor black people and poor brown people and poor white people can't live? You look at everything around us, they want our communities. If you go down 4 blocks, you see all the stuff they done tore down. It started years ago with the waterfront. And they wanted 8th Street, 8th and Madison, 8th and Adams, and then the mayor was involved in that. Now that he's back, he wants to develop the whole city, and he wants black folks out. He wants this to be a white city with middle class whites and upper middle class blacks. He don't want poor blacks in this city. There's a revolution going when it comes to poor versus middle class. You cannot walk in my shoes and say what you're going to do for black community if you have never lived in those communities. If you had never spent time in those communities, if you had never seen the rats and roaches that used to run through those communities, if you had never seen the landlords play little games and stuff and say, well, you don't have to pay your rent this week, but what we're going to do, we're going to add $25 a month on to your rent, and people never catch up. They should be fixing these houses up, giving it back to poor folks. Years ago, the DuPonts brought most of these houses for their workers. Then they put poor black folks in these houses. We've been there ever since. Now we got to get out of our community. We're going to lose our community because somebody wanted to build houses and they wanted to say, we're going to raise the rent. A landlord is never going to do right. No, you got a development sitting on the side, so we're going to reinvent this city, and we're going to change this city over. You all stay still. When we get them out, then you all can come back and fix up your property, and you can get the money you want to get for rent and stuff. That's wrong. And for 458, 458 is dangerous to everybody in the black community, because they may say one community, but they mean all community in the black. They're going to march black folks out of this city. Believe me, they're going to march black folks out of this city. The fight go on. Black folks stand up, because you're about to lose your house and the city that you love. Thank you.
Now, you've heard us talk about government officials a lot here today, but we are grateful that we have so many allies who are willing to stand up for the community and willing to stand up for the residents, not only in the city of Wilmington, but across this state. And just last week, there was a letter sent to the Delaware General Assembly, the Delaware House, stating that they did not support members of City Council did not support this bill. And that was led by the effort of Council President Trippy Congo. While all those members who signed that bill could not join us today, we are grateful to have Councilwoman Yolanda McCoy from the 6th District here as well too. But I would like to bring up Council President Trippy Congo.
Thank you. Before we get started, I just have to thank the community advocates who have been on the forefront for legislation and for fighting for communities. Specifically, Kobe Owen, Cheyenne Miller, and Brandon Fletcher. They have been at council meetings, whether in the House or in the chambers or virtually, since I became president. Again, just fighting for their community. So I really thank you all for keeping us in line, for trying to keep us in line. Thank you so much. And I also want to thank Councilmember Yolanda McCoy, Councilmember Shanae Darby, Councilmember Xanthia Oliver, Councilmember Michelle Harley, and Councilmember Linda Gray for signing that letter that we sent down to the General Assembly opposing the eminent domain legislation as it is currently written. I also want to thank State Rep Sherry Dorsey Walker, who at one point in time was the only legislator from Wilmington who did not sign on to eminent domain. Through conversation, there have been others who have removed their names from the legislation. So I also want to thank State Rep Mimi Brown, for I had a conversation with her this morning, and just through the conversation that I had, she understood the far-reaching effects that this legislation could have on our city. So she said that she was going to remove her name. And hopefully other legislators, especially from Wilmington, will do the same and follow suit, as State Reps Sherry Dorsey Walker and Melissa Mimi Brown Minor have already done. But let's not really play games with it. I don't want to repeat a lot of what was already said about the concerns of eminent domain as it is currently written. We understand, a lot of us on council understand that it could be a good tool to get rid of some of the eyesores that are in our city, but it also could be abused, and that's our concern. So we're concerned, our concerns are, why is it being rushed? I know I did not hear about this bill attempting to be talked about in Dover from our mayor. I heard it from state legislators, so why would the mayor not have a conversation with council members first to get our feedback and our input? Why will we not have a community forum to get the community's feedback and concerns and input? For it to be fast-tracked, like has already been said, is extremely concerning to me and other council members. Why would a State Rep Bud Friel, why would he pass off that legislation to a black member when Bud Friel could not get it? He couldn't gain any ground with it, so he decided to pass it off to a black legislator down in Dover. And shame on us for not knowing better. I could stay up here for days to talk about the red flags. Hopefully those legislators in Dover understand those red flags, and we're not trying to stop it completely. We just want to understand it better. Like the community wants to understanding better. What's 6 months going to do? We could spend this summer just having community forums talking about eminent domain, and the General Assembly, they could take it back up in January. But why is it being rushed the last 2 weeks in June? I don't understand that. And let's not also play games with the messenger, our mayor. People have concerns about his intent because he's a developer. He's done some great developing on the riverfront. But the concern is he trying to develop our entire city to look like the riverfront? We don't want that. So the messenger plays a huge role in this, in the way that he's trying to fast track it, and the way he didn't include council. And his comeback will be, as some of you may have heard, that council will have to approve every property. But he has 7 members on council who pretty much fall in line with whatever he wants to get done. So that's another red flag, that he knows that. So we don't have a council that is understanding enough of the community's concerns to even listen. So when you hear him say that council is going to be involved in the process, we don't even know the process, first of all. But council has to approve of every property, but he already has 7. And those 7 are going to do whatever he wants them to do, like they have already done this entire session of City Council. So again, thank you so much to Cheyenne and Brandon and Fletcher, and for everybody who's up here. Thank you guys so much for helping even me to understand some of the pitfalls that have come through City Council that have been proposed in Dover. And please don't ever give up the fight. I know our numbers may not be their numbers, but one day they will, and we will overcome.
I actually did not have anything prepared, but I just wanted to state that I want to piggyback off of what Council President Trippy Congo stated. We really need to slow this down. House Bill 458 is something that basically was kind of rushed and put upon us. We had to learn from our state delegation what was going on so that we would have understanding, because if it passes, then it's sitting in our lap. And we needed to make certain that everyone knew what this was. My job has been basically for the past 5 years is trying to have more understanding about housing policy, because this is what we've been working on pretty much since I got in. This is my second term. There are so many tools that have been put into place, and I feel as though we should be confident in the tools that have been passed, that we should be working to deal with health issues, safety issues, and development. I do not believe that we actually need House Bill 458, but I am still willing to listen because that's my job. So I just wanted to make certain everyone who can vote on that here that we are willing to listen, but we really need for you to actually to slow it down and bring us into the conversation. That's all I had to say.
Next up, I would like to bring up the third vice president of the NAACP and Newcastle County Councilman for the 10th District, which is the west side of Wilmington, Jay Street, Sr.
I am so proud of y'all. I'm proud of the young people for taking the leadership on this and for being willing and committed to the fight and the struggle. And I can't convey in words how exasperating this whole situation is from me and what I see. I looked at my phone last night about 10 o'clock, and I see where 2 teenagers and an 8-year-old shot in the 300 block South Jackson Street. The 200 block of South Jackson Street, once upon a time, was the Jackson Street Boys Club. So we tore down a safe haven, and we wonder why we're in the situation that we're in. But my major point with that is, that was 7:30 last night, got an 8-year-old shot. It's 1 o'clock. What has the mayor said about that? Where are they on that? They're running this through, they're not walking it through, they're running this through purposely and intentionally. And what it is, as far as I'm concerned, is dastardly mischief. Because why do you have to, number one, why did this switch from Bud to Namdi? Okay, and I'm told that it was said, well, if Bud did it, it could be perceived as being racist. So you pass it on, and now it's funny, it's not racist now. Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. Now, anybody with common sense knows that 1,500 vacant properties in the city is a problem. Vacant properties are a safe haven for crime and criminal activities. But if you're going to make the community safer and you're really serious about housing, why isn't the term affordable housing being used as part and parcel to this process? Because it is not intended. That is not the purpose, that is not the intention, okay? The intention is to give all these properties to the land bank, and then they run to the bank with the land. As I have said in the last 2 weeks on council floor, county council floor, because there's a proposal that's going to ask the county to give the city $500,000 for affordable housing, supposed affordable housing. I'm not going to support that because the city has proven itself to be unworthy of trust as it relates to housing and public policy. If you recall, during the end of Mayor Pazicki's first term, he and the city treasurer end up in court over $500,000 that was in question that was spent with the so-called Wilmington Housing Partnership Program. That's just a fact of the matter. That's never been resolved. What the mayor did, he just waited until there was a change in the treasurer's office, and all of a sudden the litigation went away. The city was found guilty of non-compliance by HUD, Housing and Urban Development. Non-compliance over $446,000 that was misspent. They're not worthy of trust with existing laws and existing public policy, housing policies. What makes anybody think that they're going to be worthy of trust as it relates to new power and what they say they're going to do? And finally, the overwhelming majority of city council can be trusted to do one thing and one thing only, and that's do whatever the hell the mayor tells them to do. It's a shame and a disgrace, but that is reason by itself not to allow this eminent domain legislation to go forward. Finally, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. Vice President.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not a lawyer. I've never held myself out to be a lawyer. However, what I think I do best is successfully bring class action litigation on behalf of people who need assistance. And with your permission, I will do everything I can to see to it that this mayor during this term never gets a chance to use eminent domain, even if it passes, because I will do everything I can to tie it up in court for the next 2 or 3 years until we have something that's fair and equitable to the people that live in the city of Wilmington. Thank you, Mr. President.
And just a little bit more to stay on point about housing justice here in the city of Wilmington. Just a few weeks ago, we saw a grave injustice done. We saw a ton of people, dozens of people, removed from their house with no plan for them to go. So we have the sister here of one of those people who were removed from their house on North Adams Street to talk about the failed policy that they said was going to be a solution in that. Lanita Brooks.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lanita Brooks. Like you said, my brother, William Brooks, lived in one of them properties, and the only thing I have to say is, like, Trippy addressed one time in the city council meeting right afterwards that if it happened somewhere else, these residents that were staying on 800 Adams Street, they would be placed somewhere else, not in a dirty motel where they're living now. And it just saddens me that now that, I mean, I was calling my brother every day anyway because I check on him all the time, but now I'm constantly calling him every single day, every like 5 minutes, just to make sure he's okay because, you know, like he was staying in an apartment. He wasn't staying in a motel. So now the residents over there, they went from turning the key to an apartment to swiping a card to get into the door. So, I mean, it just hurts because it seemed like, I'm not saying everybody on city council, but they can't get it together to help all these residents. And the only person I've heard from so far is Sherry Dorsey trying to get my brother and these residents somewhere to go. I haven't heard from anybody else. Yes, AJ is a slum lord, but like I said again, these was these people's homes. These was the kids' homes. Now everybody's living in one motel room. Like, between 5 and 6 people living in one motel room. It's just not right. And again, I'm just reaching out and asking anybody that if y'all can help these residents, please, any landlords out there, please reach out to City Council, Chandra Pitts, Sherry Dorsey, any representative that you guys can think of, and get in touch with them and let them know that you have housing available for all these residents to go. Thank you.
I know we're getting tight on time. Was there any questions from y'all real quick?
I got a question and a comment if it's okay.
Yes.
Right here first. To the right? Yeah. Put your hand on my shoulder. Okay. Come up a little. Okay, good afternoon. Don't be scared. I'm not gonna go too much over what's already been said. But I think that what my young people need to understand is there is a historical precedent that exists as it pertains to eminent domain, and you're standing right on the holy grounds from which it existed. The state building was resurrected on the very church of Bishop Peter Spencer, where we get Peter Spencer Plaza. In 1813, Bishop Peter Spencer was the individual who took us from slavery, where we were considered chattel slaves, and made us a people, and from that came the African Union Church. So the state of Delaware constructed this state building, and if you notice, the great east side that everyone speaks about, they turned their backs. The back of the state building is in the direction of the old east side. My name is Brother Dwight L. Davis, and a very brief historical perspective needs to be said about who we are and why this is taking place. This is taking place because there is a conspiracy that is against the federal law. 42 U.S.C. 242 prevents any state from depriving citizens of their constitutional rights and guarantees. And as the chairperson of ANDA, the Coalition of Reparations and Freedom, I want to thank the Legislative Black Caucus, not individually but collectively, because when the Legislative Black Caucus put into play the Criminal Justice Reform Act, and when State Senator Darius Brown was in fact the chairperson of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and then unjust charges were leveled against him, they gave us all the empirical evidence we need in order to do what Councilman Street says, and that's bring about a class action suit. So I'm calling for the intervention of the U.S. Department of Justice, U.S. Attorney General Garland, because we need federal intervention, because we already have an overwhelming amount of evidence to support what it is that we're standing here fighting for. So I'm going to end it by saying thank you, Brandon. I've never met you, but I want to thank you and Kobe for picking up where we leaving off, because this battle is not over, it's just beginning. Thank you. Come on.
Good.
Oh, okay. Where's my shoulder?
There you go.
Okay.
Right behind you. Right
Okay.
behind
All right. Thank you.
you. All right. Is there any questions from the media?
When it comes to council members, and I don't know who would be the best to answer this question, so you guys can choose. Council members who support the eminent domain bill argue that they need this in order to help get rid of these vacant properties that are blighting a neighborhood. And they say that there are residents who are supportive of this. They want to see these vacant buildings gone, or at least occupied, so that they're not living next to a vacant building. And I'm curious to know your responses to that. Have you heard that as well in the community?
I'll let the council members speak in a second, but first off, a lot of these vacant properties are already owned by the city or by the land bank that are dilapidated right now. And right now, what happens also when people are in these homes that are vacant and they catch fire and they damage homes next to them, the city therefore says it's not their fault, even though they own it, that you have to pay out your own pocket to get it fixed because you can't go through an insurance agency. That's what's happening right now. Now, the city council, under the new iteration of city council and the mayor 7, they passed the blight bill because they said the blight bill was going to fix this. But all the blight bill has done is displaced and created more vacant properties here in the city of Wilmington, and has not truly addressed the true housing issue and housing crisis we have in the city. So yeah, no, I would disagree with what they're saying. And if those residents, and a lot of those residents have spoken out about the bad properties in their neighborhood, but they've spoken out to these council members about the city owning these properties and not doing anything with it. So if they want to get something done, they need to look in their own backyard before they start taking our properties. But I'll let the council people answer from their perspective. Sorry.
Just to answer that question, actually, Mr. Owens actually stated it perfectly. As we have created these tools, the land bank, the blight bill. All it's done is actually shift the property from one hand to another. Nothing actually gets done to the property. It's just the ownership. And so, we've had people come like, oh, it's falling apart. There's squirrels in the attic. Those squirrels aren't going anywhere just because it actually went from one hand to the other. It's going from the city to the land bank. And now the land bank will hold on to it until they're able to get enough properties together to do some type of development.
And just to piggyback, they both worded it perfectly. But we all, like council members, we understand how this could be a useful tool. But again, it could be abused, and that's our main concern, is that it could be abused. It's too far reaching. Like, we understand that some property owners, they just pay their court fees, and then the building is vacant again for another year till they can pay their court fees. We understand that. But after we get those obvious like nemesis properties like Peony on Market Street, after we get rid of that building, like, how far more reaching is it going to go? So that's the concern that I have and a lot of other council members. Not that we have to address the vacant properties, but what happens after we address those eyesores? What's next on the agenda? And Kobe said it perfectly. Like, we're the biggest owner of vacant properties. The city is. So why not take care of what we have first and then go after the private owners? Thank you.
Any other questions? Can we get from the media? Can we get from the media real quick? Is there any other questions for the media? You have another? Yeah? No? Okay.
I'd like to say that with all the money from this house creates an economics, creates money. Where is this money going? We can develop jobs for people. We shouldn't be concentrated on sending people to jail time, so forth and so on, because we can train the people and put them in programs, send them to school, and develop a greater economy for Wilmington, Delaware. I am a victim who came up out of the streets of Wilmington, Delaware, and I know how it is to be out there caught up in the streets right now. I'm studying for my PhD because I studied hard. These people need programs. These people need somebody to care about them. Stop saying that you care about them and don't reach out for them, because karma is real. You might take all this money and put it somewhere else, but karma is real because you can't patch it up with gentrification, because you still got to deal with the problem.
Thank you for that. Again, I just want to say thank you for everyone coming out. Ty, did you want to say something?
Very quickly, I want to say good afternoon. Thank everybody for coming out, answering this this call. I want to thank our NAACP leaders, Kobe and young Brandon. And I want to thank, of course, our president and our councilwoman for being here and having a strong show of faith and courage. Our councilman Councilman Street, who has always been by our side, always been the torch and the light, and all those, Brother Dwight, L. Davis, who has always kept the torch burning. Right quickly, I want to say injustice anywhere, I heard it said, is injustice everywhere. And I want to go back to what Dick Gregory said. Let us not look at the monster, black people or people of color, as being the monster when he's running around in the neighborhoods, and forget the mad scientist. I say to you today that the mad scientist is at work, and we understand that this reeks of institutionalized racism. We're here today because we're not going to stand for this kind of behavior. We were patient. We watched as our administration, our current administration, put more emphasis on brick and mortar than flesh and blood. That has got to stop, where we lift up developers while at the same time we keep our foot on the neck of the downtrodden. We got to pay attention, and we got to be ready to say enough is enough. It's already been articulated, and now we have to be about our Father's business. Be ye not weary in well-doing, you shall reap if you faint not. I'm the founding director of Churches Take a Corner, one of the co-founders of the Governor's Council of Faith-Based Partnerships by Executive Order 33, and a past president of the Interdenominational Ministers Action Council. And we're going to be here, and we're going to cry loud. We'll be here until Shiloh comes, until this direction has reversed itself. Lastly, let's look at the symptomatic things that come long before you start pushing us out of our house. What about what was brought to our attention through the efforts of J.P. Morgan Chase? If indeed we were to pursue wealth tomorrow, we as people of color, right, it would take us between 94 and 240 years to match the median income of whites. How in the world do you know all this? How in the world do you have that data while at the same time you gonna push on with your mad scientist agenda? God bless you and thank you.
And that was him not being prepared to speak. Again, I just want to say thank you to all the reporters for answering our call. I know it was last minute to come out and cover this. I greatly appreciate it. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or reach out to any of the speakers here today. Again, thank you so much for being here.